Previously in Part 1, I was sold for 50 silver taels to be a shadow. Wearing a stolen name and a lethal mission, I entered the palace to poison the dying Emperor Alexander. I thought I was the hunter, but I was wrong. From the very first cup of tea, he saw through my lies. He didn't execute me. Instead, he pulled me into his dangerous embrace and whispered, "If you want me dead, just stay by my side." Now, as the poison takes hold and secrets unfurl, I must decide, am I his assassin or the only one who can save him? But Alexander Shen didn't seem to mind at all that I had nearly become Julian Qi's personal maid. He just smiled and kissed my forehead, then told the guards to continue driving the carriage. After returning to the palace, Alexander went to his study to handle state affairs. Before he left, he told me he would be joining me for dinner at Bellflower Palace. I sent Lucy to Everjoy Palace to inform Consort Tong that I had successfully delivered the package to Julian Qi. When Lucy returned, she was carrying a food box filled to the brim with 7 or 8 different kinds of pastries. She said, "Consort Tong says that if you'd like anything else to eat, you're welcome to visit her palace." I popped a coconut pastry into my mouth and nodded. All right. Good. I had other things I wanted to ask her anyway. As I sat there, still wondering what dishes to prepare for Alexander's dinner, Lucy entered with 2 young eunuchs, each carrying something. Lucy announced what they had brought. "My lady, here's the jewelry you brought back from your family home. The emperor finds your attire in the palace a bit too plain, so he has ordered the Department of Palace Services to bring several boxes of gems and Eastern pearls for you to choose from. There are also new fabrics from this autumn's tribute. You may pick some for your winter clothes." I was stunned. In a daze, I picked out a few things, then glanced inside Victoria Qi's jewelry boxes before telling Lucy to put them away safely. That evening, when Alexander came for dinner, I asked him about it. He took a bite of fried ribbon fish, rested his chin on his hand, and smiled at me. "Sophie, I'm planning to make you a consort." "Why?" Alexander raised an eyebrow slightly. "Because I like you." He intentionally mimicked the way I usually speak, his voice lilting at the end. I felt my cheeks flush and lowered my head, taking a few bites of rice. Then, as if suddenly remembering something, I quickly pushed the small, lidded porcelain bowl in front of him. "Drink it while it's hot." "What's this? Steamed egg custard?" "It's bird's nest soup." Lucy said it's even more nourishing than steamed egg custard. I looked at him seriously and declared, "From now on, you must drink a bowl of this every day, and you have to take the medicine the doctor prescribed, on time. I'll be watching you." "Alexander, if you don't listen, I'll..." Unable to think of a suitable threat, I trailed off, but Alexander simply propped up his chin and watched me with a smile. "You'll what?" "I won't sleep with you anymore." And just like that, I watched as Alexander lifted the lid and drank the entire bowl of bird's nest soup without hesitation. He put down the spoon, opened his arms to me, and said gently, "Sophie, come here. Let me hold you." I walked over, and as soon as I stopped in front of him, he pulled me into his arms. "My little Sophia." He stroked my hair, his lips brushing against my ear. His warm breath sent a shiver through me, and a strange heat surged from the depths of my soul. Unsure of what to do, I could only clutch the soft fabric of his robes tighter. In the next moment, Alexander's scorching kiss landed on the corner of my lips. It was a very brief kiss, as light as a dragonfly skimming the water's surface, but I could feel his heart beating fast against my chest. I looked up and caught sight of his slightly reddened ear tips. Lucy had already led the palace staff quietly out of the room. We were alone. I gazed at Alexander expectantly, hoping he would continue, but he just turned his head away with some difficulty, his voice hoarse. "No, Sophie, you're still too young." "I'm not that young. I'll be 14 next month." Alexander's gaze was heavy as he looked at me. For a split second, I thought I saw a burning flame in his eyes. Then he suddenly curled his lips into a smile and asked me, "Do you even know what I want to do?" I shook my head honestly. "No." Alexander patted my head, burying my face in his chest, and chuckled softly. "You'll find out eventually." Finally, he kissed my cheek and gently lifted me, placing me on the bed. The bed was soft and his chest was warm. Just before I fell asleep, I vaguely heard Alexander's voice. "My little Sophia, I am patient. I can wait until you are 16. It sounded like he was suppressing some kind of emotion. I just didn't understand what it was yet. The next morning when I woke up, Alexander was already gone. After breakfast, I took a pair of Victoria Cheese pearl hairpins from my dressing case and went to Everjoy Palace to visit Consort Tom. When she saw the hairpins, she raised an eyebrow, taking them to examine with interest. "Aren't these Victoria Cheese precious pearl hairpins? She's shown them off to me so many times. How did they end up in your hands?" I told her what had happened at the Prime Minister's estate the day before. After hearing the story, Consort Tom clapped her hands and roared with laughter. "It's a shame I wasn't there. I would have loved to see the look on Victoria Chee's face. Just a few boxes of cheap jewelry, and she's bragged about them to me hundreds of times. She really never gets tired of it." I asked her, "You don't like Victoria Chee, do you?" She arched an eyebrow. "Do you?" I shook my head honestly. "I don't like her either." And just like that, Consort Tong and I became friends. Because she said, "As long as you hate Victoria Chee and Julian Chee, we're the best of friends." I sat at Consort Tong's palace all morning, tasting many delicious pastries, and even packing a box to take back to Bellflower Palace. With Lucy away, I put the drug into the pastries in front of the young maid, Luna. She looked very pleased and seemed to trust me completely. Ever since I agreed to her request, I had made a point of putting the drug into Alexander's tea or food right in front of her. And she truly never suspected a thing. She was as foolish and inexplicably self-confident as Julian Chee. That evening, Alexander came over. When he heard I had spent the morning with Consort Tom, he chuckled and patted my head. "Court affairs are demanding, so I might be quite busy for the next little while. If you get bored, feel free to visit her more often." I asked him, "Are you going to deal with Julian Chee?" "Not just Julian Chee. The entire Prime Minister's estate." Alexander smiled faintly, his eyes flashing with a momentary sharpness. Then he asked me, "Sophie, you've been reading books on statecraft lately. What is the punishment for a disloyal minister?" He was referring to the books I had browsed through while learning to read during my stay at his palace. I thought for a long while before speaking hesitantly. If they defy the sovereign's command, bring disaster to the people, and usurp power, upon further defiance, they are to be executed without pardon. In Alexander's clear and tranquil eyes, a star-like light began to shine. He then wrapped me in an intimate embrace and kissed the corner of my lips. "My little Sophia is so clever." I thought so too. As he had said, for the next few days, whenever I wasn't reading, I went to Everjoy Palace to spend time with Consort Tong. Now that we were good friends, Consort Tong told me her given name, Charlotte Liang. I was a little surprised. What a gentle name. Her eyes widened. "Are you trying to say I'm not gentle enough?" I thought so, but I didn't say it. I don't know how she could tell. Thankfully, she didn't really mind. She popped a peanut crisp into her mouth and began to tell me about her and Alexander's past. Alexander's birth mother was only a low-ranking lady, and she was poisoned before he was born. He was born with a frail constitution and poor health, which should have disqualified him from being crown prince. However, the empress's family was too powerful. The late emperor, intending to suppress them, inadvertently provoked the former crown prince into rebellion, which ultimately cost him his title. And because the late emperor had few heirs, on his deathbed, he had no choice but to pass the throne to Alexander. Julian Chee was the former crown prince's study companion before he was deposed, she said, sipping her fruit tea and continuing. His Majesty had a very difficult childhood. The crown prince, being the empress's son, would team up with Julian Chee to find all sorts of ways to torment him. During the winter solstice 5 years ago, it was snowing heavily. They framed him for stealing the empress's bracelet, pushed him onto the cracked ice of the lake, and told him he couldn't climb out until he had reflected on his sins for a full hour. After that, Julian Chee went off drinking and celebrating with the crown prince. It was Consort Tong who couldn't bear to watch and secretly sent a guard to pull Alexander out. But Alexander's health had been deteriorating ever since. I was known throughout the capital for my beauty, my fame surpassing Victoria Chee's. She resented me for a long time because of it, even spreading rumors in the city to ruin my reputation. It was at that moment that Julian Chee came to break off our engagement, which only served to confirm the rumors. After finishing her story, Consort Tong concluded, "Anyway, not a single person in that Chi family is a good person." I couldn't agree more. Over the past few days, the wound on Alexander's cheek was healing, but his health didn't seem to be improving. As the weather grew colder, his face became paler. Even though I brewed him pear soup every day, it did nothing to ease his frequent coughing at night. Thinking about how his poor health was largely man-made, I suddenly felt an immense hatred for Julian Qi and the former crown prince I had never met. I hated them so much that if they were standing in front of me right now, I wouldn't hesitate for a second to draw a sword and kill them. After returning from Consort Tom's palace, I spent the whole afternoon busy in the small kitchen. By dinner time, I had brought out a pot of fragrant matsutake chicken soup. When Alexander arrived, I placed a bowl of soup in front of him. "Tonight, I'm watching you. You have to drink 2 bowls." A hint of helpless amusement mixed with his smile, but he also looked quite happy. "All right." After dinner, Alexander and I sat facing each other on the soft couch. I continued practicing my characters, while he lowered his head to review a few memorials he had brought with him. The candlelight flickered inside its glass shade, and the orange peels roasting over the charcoal filled the entire bedchamber with a sweet, fresh scent. I finished the last page of my book and suddenly looked up at him. "Alexander." The hand holding his brush paused slightly as he looked up at me. The orange glow of the candlelight danced in his eyes, softening them with a warm, hazy affection. I gripped the pages of the book and said in a low voice, "5 years ago, when I was 8, my younger brother was being playful and insisted I take him to the lake to catch fish. It was the winter solstice. It was snowing heavily outside, very cold, and the lake was frozen. There was a round hole near the shore for ice fishing, and that's where my brother pushed me in. But I know how to swim. Even though it was freezing, I managed to climb out right away." Alexander was silent for a moment. A star-like brilliance flowed in his eyes. Then he abruptly put down his brush and ink, stood up, walked over, and swept me into his arms. I snuggled into his embrace, staring at him without blinking. His warm fingertips brushed against my cheek, and I heard Alexander's deep, hoarse voice. "Sophie." "Alexander," I said softly, "I wish I had known you back then. I would have saved you immediately." It was a miracle of fate. On the winter solstice 5 years ago, long before I had even met Alexander, our destinies had already intersected in the heavy snow. Alexander rested his chin on my shoulder, his voice very soft. "If I had known you back then, Sophie, I would never have let you suffer so much." That night, Alexander held me as we slept. In a state between sleep and wakefulness, I felt something warm pressing against my leg and reached out to push it. "Alexander, I'm already hot. Move the bed warmer away." A muffled grunt came from above my head. After a long moment, Alexander's hoarse voice finally sounded. "All right." Deep winter was approaching, and my 14th birthday was drawing near. Alexander told me that Julian Qi had managed to find a scapegoat who confessed to the assassination attempt on him outside the Prime Minister's estate. This person also conveniently identified his mastermind, General Owen Song, the commander of the 100,000-strong army in West Prefecture. In the throne room, Julian Qi and Owen Song argued so fiercely that they nearly came to blows. In the end, Alexander issued a decree ordering Owen Song to assist Julian Qi in reinvestigating the matter. The 100,000 troops in West Prefecture and the 60,000 in Yue Prefecture, they cannot be allowed to join forces. Naturally, they must be defeated one by one. Alexander sat at the table opposite me, brush in hand, and paused in thought with a slight frown. After several days of studying military strategy, I ventured a suggestion. "Perhaps you could temporarily grant control of the Yue Prefecture troops to Julian Qi and send him north to quell the unrest." "Oh?" Alexander paused and looked up at me. "What does my Sophie have in mind?" I bit my lip and glanced toward the doorway. Luna was gone. "I suspect Marcus Shen isn't dead. He's been hidden by the Prime Minister's family somewhere near Yueshao City." Marcus Shen was the former crown prince. Years ago, he had attempted a rebellion to force the late emperor to abdicate. Instead, he was punished, stripped of his title, and placed under house arrest in his mansion. A few days later, a fire broke out at the crown prince's mansion. After it was extinguished, they found a corpse in Marcus Shen's room, burned beyond recognition. Sophie guesses correctly. Without a royal bloodline in their hands, the Qi family wouldn't dare to be so bold. Alexander smiled so wide his eyes crinkled. In that case, I'll give them another chance to usurp the throne. In the art of war, this strategy is called luring the snake out of its hole. 3 days after Julian Qi left the capital, it was my 14th birthday. As soon as I woke up, Eunuch Fu arrived to read an imperial edict. Alexander had promoted me straight to the rank of noble consort, but in truth, the promotion didn't make much difference. It was only 2 days ago that I had learned from Consort Tong that she and I were the only 2 consorts in Alexander's entire harem. The biggest difference between a noble consort and a beauty was simply a matter of which one of us had to bow to the other. As my mind wandered, I saw Eunuch Fu smiling at me. Noble consort Sang, please accept the edict and rise. The jewelry and clothes that were being made are finished. The emperor would like you to see if you like them. Of course, I liked them. In addition to the dresses made earlier, Alexander had also sent a long fur cloak of pure white fox. A circle of soft, fluffy fur wrapped around my neck. I had never experienced such a warm winter. That morning, Consort Tong made a special trip to give me a box as a gift, specifically instructing me to look through it before Alexander arrived. I did as she said, and I was utterly astounded. When Alexander came to Bellflower Palace that afternoon, he was quite surprised. "Sophie, why is your face so red?" I grabbed a round fan and fanned myself vigorously. "That fox fur cloak is too warm. It must be the heat. Just the heat." That picture book from Consort Tong, the things it illustrated. Before dinner, I had Lucy warm a pot of wine. After a few cups, both Alexander and I were a bit tipsy. The warmth of the charcoal fire radiated through the room. Lucy led the other servants out, and I dazedly reached for Alexander's belt. "Sophie," he scolded lightly. "Stop, you're still too young." "I'm not young." I counted on my fingers, gravely explaining to him, that picture book said that a woman is considered an adult at 15. She can marry and perform the duties of a wife. I tilted my head up, looking at him with pleading eyes. "Alexander, I turned 14 today, which means I'm 15 by traditional counting." As I spoke, I loosened my light outer robe, leaving only a pale green undergarment, and then began to remove that as well. Alexander resisted with great difficulty. "No. Sophie, I won't do anything until you're 16. His voice was strained, as if it pained him to speak. I suspected I might have accidentally hurt him and froze. Alexander seized the opportunity to throw a blanket over me, wrapping me up tightly from head to toe. Through gritted teeth, he said, "Sophie, go to sleep. Don't move." I stared at him with wide eyes. "Alexander, are you angry? If you don't go to sleep right now, I will be." I immediately closed my eyes. The next morning, I noticed faint dark circles under Alexander's eyes. He didn't attend the morning court session. After breakfast, he led me to Everjoy Palace, and before he even saw Consort Tong, he began to roar, "Charlotte Long, get out here!" "What is it?" Consort Tong emerged from the inner chamber, yawning. Seeing Alexander, she raised an eyebrow and smiled. "Did your majesty have a pleasant evening?" Alexander said coldly. "Noble consort Sang is only 14. What are you doing teaching her those things?" 14? Consort Tong was stunned. "Isn't she already 15? Alexander's gaze turned even colder. "Does she look like she's 15 to you?" Realizing her mistake, Consort Tong wisely held her tongue. Alexander's anger hadn't subsided. He continued to glare at her, so I quickly tugged on his sleeve. "Let it go." Consort Tong meant well. "Exactly," Consort Tong chimed in, emboldened by my support. "You're almost 20, and you've never even, at your age, all the sons of noble families have wives, concubines, and children running all over the place." Alexander was so angry, he laughed. "That is a matter between me and noble consort Sang. It's none of your concern." In the end, he left with his arm around me. As we were leaving, Consort Tong leaned in and whispered in my ear, "A frustrated man is a terrifying thing." Alexander went to the imperial study to deal with state affairs. Before he left, he specifically asked Lucy to fetch a kind-faced old matron to give me a thorough and proper lesson. Only then did I slowly begin to understand. The matron looked at me kindly. "You're still young," she said. "There's no rush for these things. The most important thing is to take care of your health first. From that day on, I started eating an extra bowl of rice every day at noon. Because the matron said that, this sort of thing, would bring great pleasure. I wanted to bring Alexander pleasure, because I liked him so very much, but he grew busier and busier. Once, when I went to the imperial study to find him, I saw Sean, dressed in black, kneeling before him. The young man's fair face was stained with blood. The traitors on the northern frontier have been executed. The 80,000 cavalry are now under the command of a capable general. I happened to hear this as I walked in. The young man called Sean heard the sound, turned his head, and gave me a sharp look. Alexander tapped his fingers on the desk, his voice calm. Continue. Yesterday, I infiltrated the general's estate and persuaded General Owen Song to pledge his allegiance to the court. He promised that if the Prime Minister's estate shows any sign of rebellion, he will do everything in his power to suppress it. A smile touched Alexander's lips. His gaze shifted and fell upon me. Sophie, in your opinion, can Owen Song be trusted? It's hard to say. Owen Song's position had never been clear since Alexander took the throne. A man like him would only side with the one who held the advantage. I walked over and looked down at what was in front of Alexander. It was a secret message, stained with blood. On the surface, Yuezhou City is calm, but in reality, it's completely under the control of Julian Qi's men. Even the 60,000 troops there have been swayed to the Prime Minister's side. Alexander's voice was unhurried, sounding quite calm, but an undercurrent of danger was hidden beneath. He toyed with the jade paperweight on his desk and said lightly, "Let's wait. I want to see what kind of trouble a useless pretty boy like Julian Qi can stir up." As the new year approached, there were endless tasks to attend to. Alexander became so busy he began forgetting to eat, so I made it my duty to see that he ate at every meal. That night, the room was filled with the sweet scent of pear. I fell asleep curled up in Alexander's arms and had a dream. In the dream, I was back in Bellflower Palace. The ground was covered in vast fields of fiery red hibiscus flowers. Alexander was wearing vibrant red robes, which made his face look even paler. I ran to him happily and asked, "Alexander, are you here to marry me?" He looked down at me, his eyes filled with icy ridicule. Only then did I notice the sword in his hand. "No," he said softly. "I'm here to kill you." A sharp pain seized my heart in the dream, a pain so intense it instantly pulled me from my sleep. But when I opened my eyes, the space beside me was empty. The spot where Alexander had been lying slowly lost its warmth, turning cold. For a moment I was adrift. While I was still dazed, the door to the bedchamber was pushed open gently, and a handsome, slender figure appeared. Seeing that I was awake, he stopped in his tracks. Outside, a thick layer of snow covered the ground. The moonlight reflecting off it illuminated Alexander's handsome face with perfect clarity, along with the shock and panic in his eyes. "Sophie," he said in a low voice, "why are you awake?" I tilted my head slightly, looking at him across the distance. "Alexander, will you kill me?" Alexander didn't answer immediately. He strode across the bedchamber, stood by the bed, and pulled me forcefully into his arms. His clothes were covered in a thin layer of snow, which melted into droplets in the warmth of the room's charcoal fire, dripping onto my face. "Sophie, did you have a nightmare?" he said softly. "I could never love you enough. How could I possibly kill you?" His voice was gentle, full of comfort, but the panic in my heart didn't ease in the slightest, because what I smelled on Alexander was the heavy scent of blood, a scent that not even the cold wind, the snow, or the sweet pear fragrance could hide. I hugged him back tightly, my fingers tracing the thin fabric on his back, moving upwards until I felt a pair of prominent shoulder blades. A boundless terror took root in my heart, like creeping weeds. "Alexander." I tried to keep the tremble out of my voice. "You have to tell me the truth. What is wrong with your body?" After I asked that question, Alexander was silent for a long time. Then he sighed softly. "Sophie, it's not my body, it's you." Alexander straightened my disheveled clothes, dressed me piece by piece in my garments, and draped a fox fur cloak over me. Finally, he led me, warmly bundled up, into a dark, secret chamber. As soon as I entered, I saw the corpse lying on the floor, and Sean standing beside it. Blood was still dripping from the tip of his sword. I stared at the body on the floor. Strangely, I didn't feel afraid, only a growing sense of familiarity. After a moment, I suddenly realized. Luna? It was her. Alexander nodded and said in a low voice, she was not one of Julian Qi's people, but a spy from the northern frontier's Qiang tribe who infiltrated the capital. After worming her way into the prime minister's estate, that fool Julian Qi sent her into the palace. For the past few days, she has been secretly passing intelligence about the palace's defenses. Yesterday, Sean intercepted her secret letter. Only then did we learn that the Qiang tribe's royal guards have already snuck into the capital and are lying in wait. After the new year, when spring comes, Julian Qi will march from Yuezhou to the capital with Marcus Shen, under the pretext of restoring the rightful ruler. At that time, the Qiang guards will storm the palace amidst the chaos, seize the new emperor, and claim power for themselves. I never would have imagined that beyond the ambitions of Julian Qi and the prime minister's estate, another power was hiding in the shadows. Thinking back to what Sean had said in the Imperial study a few days ago about the northern traitors being executed, I slowly began to understand. After explaining all this, Alexander fell silent for a moment, then spoke slowly. Sophie, I want to send you out of the palace for a while. In the secret message Luna sent to the Qian, she clearly wrote that I was the person Alexander valued most. The life or death of consort Sophie may be used to coerce him. Alexander said that with Luna just having died, the new message hadn't been sent out yet. He would send me to a safe place outside the palace until the matter was settled and it was safe to return. Then he would bring me back. After you leave, I'll have Lucy disguise herself as you and continue living in Bellflower Palace. She knows martial arts, so she'll be fine. At first, I didn't want to agree, but I knew very well that if I stayed in the palace, I would very likely become Alexander's weakness. I agreed. To be extra cautious, he had Consort Tom leave the palace with me as well, and had Sean arrange for reliable secret guards to protect us. On the first day of the new year, as dawn broke, Consort Tom and I sat in a carriage and left the palace through the west gate. A piercing wind blew in through the cracks in the carriage curtain, stinging my cheeks. I clutched my skirt and suddenly called out, "Stop the carriage." The guard driving the carriage obediently stopped. I lifted my skirts, jumped down, and looked up. Alexander was standing at the palace gate, wrapped in a large white cloak, gazing at me from afar through the pale morning mist. I sniffled, ran all the way to him, and crashed into his arms, hugging him as tightly as I could. My little Sophia. Alexander, I won't stay and cause trouble for you, but you have to stay alive. I buried my face in his chest and whispered, remember, the palace is my home, and you are my only family now. If you die, I will follow you to the underworld. A gentle force lifted my face, and then Alexander's warm thumb gently wiped away the tears from the corner of my eye. Sophie, I know there are things you want to do. Just go do them. I'll be here to back you up, no matter what. He placed a kiss on my lips. Remember what I told you that day. It's not wrong for you to hate them or to want to kill them. When this is all over, I'll bring you home. When I returned to the carriage, my fearful, uneasy heart had settled considerably. Charlotte Liang rolled her eyes. So dramatic. I corrected her seriously. No, this is love. The secret guard assigned to us was named Seth. He looked even younger than Sean, but he was very reliable. Seth rented a small, 3-courtyard house in the market district and bought a few maids and servants. The cover story was that Charlotte Liang and I were merchants' daughters who had come to the capital to find our relatives. To be safe, Charlotte Liang said, not even her parents or brother knew that she had left the palace. That night, Charlotte Liang came to find me with a pot of wine. After 3 cups, she suddenly asked, "You're not actually Julian Qi's sister, are you?" I hesitated for a moment, but then I admitted it. I knew it. I was engaged to Julian Qi for so many years, and I never heard him mention a long-lost sister. She sneered. That man, Julian Qi, he saved my life once, and I thought he was a kind and gentle person. But later he changed so much that he became a stranger to me. When he came to my door to break off the engagement, I realized that I didn't like him anymore. Although she spoke lightly, I could still hear the sadness in her voice. But the story she told didn't sound like something Julian Qi would do. I thought for a moment. But I don't think Julian Qi was ever a good person. Have you ever considered that the person who saved your life back then might not have been him at all? As soon as I finished speaking, Charlotte Liang shot to her feet. She startled me. I was about to say it was just a guess, but then I saw her expression suddenly light up. That's right. I never even got a clear look at that person's face. Why did I just believe Julian Qi when he said it was him? After a long while, Charlotte Long finally calmed down and sat down opposite me again. Then she asked, "If you're not the daughter of the Prime Minister's estate, then who are you?" So I told her my story. Charlotte Lang listened, filled with righteous anger. She gritted her teeth. Beasts like that deserve to be called parents? Don't listen to Julian Qi's nonsense. Only someone as shameless as him could spout that nonsense about your life and body belonging to your parents. Parents who are unkind and unloving don't deserve their children's filial piety. Charlotte Liang and I talked for a long time. By the end, the whole pot of wine was empty, and we drunkenly went back to our own rooms to rest. Before we parted, she patted my shoulder and told me, "If you ever need my help with anything, just ask." After waking up the next day, I dressed carefully and then went back to my family's home. When my mother saw that I was alone this time, without eunuch Fu by my side, her face changed immediately. She rushed over and stripped off all the jewelry from my neck, hair, and wrists before asking, "Sophia, why are you home again? Where is the young master?" I thought for a moment and told her, "The young master has left the capital on business. For now, he has settled me in a private residence in the West Market. You can find me there if you need anything." As I was speaking, the door was suddenly pushed open. My brother rushed in and started pulling at my dress with a wicked grin. As he pulled, he asked, "Since you've become someone's bed warmer, have you been broken in yet? Did you bleed? Was it good?" He was only 12, but he was almost the size of a grown man. His face was fleshy, and his smile made him look even more lewd. But my mother just smiled, looking at him with loving eyes. I struggled to pull my dress from his grasp and took out a few silver melon seeds from my purse to placate him. But his eyes darted around, and he snatched the entire purse from my waist. When I tried to get it back, my mother stopped me. "Sophia, your brother is so young. Why are you squabbling with him over this?" "Right? I shouldn't squabble." In the end, I left the house empty-handed. Seth caught up with me, handed me the 2 gold leaves I had given him earlier, and then walked with me to the market district. I found 2 idle ruffians at the entrance of a gambling den and gave them my family's address. "If you can lure the son of that household here and let him play to his heart's content, I'll give you 5 more gold leaves." After taking care of that, I returned to the house Seth had rented and waited quietly. Besides reading, I spent the rest of my time thinking about Alexander. We had only known each other for a few months. The time was short, but the happiness I felt was greater than all the happiness in the first 14 years of my life combined. It was Alexander's existence that made me understand what true love looked like. It was he who taught me that it wasn't wrong to hate the people who hurt me, or even to want to kill them. I missed him so much. Night fell. I stood in the courtyard, staring blankly at the moon, thinking about Alexander for a long, long time. My brother didn't make me wait long. 3 days later, at dusk, my mother came to me for the first time, her hair disheveled, her eyes frantic. She said, "Sophia, you have to help your brother. He owes someone money, and they said if he can't pay them back, they'll cut off his fingers." I asked her, "How much money?" Her eyes darted. 1,000 taels. Of course, she was lying. That afternoon, when Seth had accompanied me to make a payment, I'd heard that my brother owed only 500 taels at the gambling den. But it didn't matter. They were going to have to pay for what they'd done one way or another, so the higher the sum, the better. I asked her to wait a moment, then went inside and came out with a banknote for 1,000 taels. After the first time, a second and third naturally followed. I gave money freely, and my brother's spending grew more and more extravagant. The third time, my parents came with him. My father held out his hand to me brazenly. "Sophia, your brother lost a little money. You're his older sister, so it's only right for you to pay it for him, isn't it?" I smiled and asked him, "How much does he need to pay back this time?" My mother held up 3 fingers. 30,000 taels. They really had some nerve. I nodded, took a dagger from my robes, and threw it on the ground in front of them. I can pay his debt. 1 finger for 1,000 taels. My mother's expression changed instantly. She shielded my brother behind her and demanded sharply, "What do you mean by that? Was I not clear? Cut off his fingers, 1,000 taels apiece." I smiled at her. "I forgot. My brother only has 10 fingers. That won't be enough to make 30,000 taels. What should we do? Perhaps we can add yours and father's?" My mother's face contorted with rage. My father cursed and was about to lunge at me, ready to hit me like he had countless times before. But he was pinned to the ground by Seth and 2 guards, forcing all 3 of them to their knees. I raised an eyebrow and said with a sigh, "Seth, you teach them." "Yes." Seth pressed my parents' heads down, slamming them hard onto the ground. "Repeat after me. Pay your respects to the consort." Their foreheads hit the stone ground with a crisp thud. I stood before them, watching the scene in silence. I once thought I would be trapped by their endless torment until I died. But in this moment, as I watched them kneel before me, the countless questions, grievances, and longings that had been knotted up in my heart began to unravel. After they kowtowed, my mother looked up and glared at me, her eyes filled with hatred and panic. "Sophia, you've gone mad. You're the one who's mad." I curled my lips into a smile, looking down on her. "I'm not Sophia. I am Sophia Lin, the consort personally appointed by the emperor." She looked at me, then twisted her head with difficulty to look at Seth holding her down behind her. She finally realized I wasn't joking. Consort, she said. "Since you're a consort now, you should bring me, your father, and your brother into the palace to enjoy the good life with you." I lost my patience and couldn't be bothered to listen to her anymore. I just picked up the dagger from the ground, examined the gleaming blade for a moment, and then plunged it into my brother's shoulder. As his pig-like squeals erupted, my mother roared, her eyes wide with fury. "Toby! Sophia Lin, how could you? How dare you?" I ignored her. I just knelt down, looked at my brother who was covered in a cold sweat and on the verge of fainting, and asked with a smile, "Does it hurt?" He opened his mouth and managed to force out a single syllable with great difficulty. "Hurts. When you cut me with the wood-chopping axe, when you jabbed bamboo skewers into my arm, it hurt me just as much." I pulled the bloody dagger out and tossed it aside. Then, under my mother's hateful gaze, I walked up to her, raised my hand, and slapped her hard across the face twice. Then I poured an entire pot of scalding tea over my father's head. Finally, I sat back down in the grand armchair, rested my chin on my hand, and coolly instructed Seth, "Cut off their fingers and send them to the gambling den to pay the debt." Seth looked like a man who had seen it all. His expression didn't flicker. He even asked me, "My lady, what should be done with them after their fingers are cut?" I thought for a good while. The spring air is chilly now. The ice on the city moat should be starting to thaw. Let them soak in the water. If they're still alive after a full hour, pull them out and let them go home on their own. And if they don't survive, I smiled airily as if it were of no concern, then they die. Amidst the hysterical curses of my parents and brother, Seth and the guards gagged them and dragged them away. Once, I had yearned for my parents to treat me the way they treated my brother, or even just a little better. But they would always hit me and scold me while telling me, "Mom and Dad love you just as much as we love your brother." At first, I couldn't tell the difference. Not until I met Alexander. He told me, "My little Sophia, when you love someone, you can't bear to see them suffer. The books say an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth." My parents said they loved me, then they hit me and cursed me. So I returned the favor. Alexander said he loved me, then he held me. I would hold him back just as tightly. I took a sip of tea and looked up to see Charlotte Liang standing at the door, watching me with a complex expression. I asked her, was that too cruel and heartless? She shook her head and came to sit beside me. "If I were you, I would have been much harsher." To be honest, I didn't think it was harsh either. Simply making them suffer what I had once suffered, how could that be called cruel? But I was a little afraid. I was afraid Alexander would think I was no good for it. Hearing me say that, Charlotte Liang sneered. "Oh, please, that man is fiercely protective of his own. Even if you had just executed those 3 in the street, he would have cleaned up the mess for you perfectly and even praised you, saying, Sophie did a great job. Believe it or not. Of course, I believed it. With this matter settled, I missed Alexander more and more. I wanted to stand before him and tell him, I paid them back for everything they did to me. And then I wanted to hear him praise me, Sophie did a great job. Or, my little Sophia is so amazing. And so I waited and waited. What arrived in the end was the news of Alexander's death. In the 3rd month of early spring, rebels in Yuzhou City raised their banner, proclaiming they would restore the true Shen bloodline by making Marcus Shen, the late empress's legitimate son, the new emperor. Led by 5,000 elite soldiers, they marched toward the capital. However, when they reached Steep Moon Pass, they were suddenly intercepted by a surprise force. The young man leading them was clad in black, his robes flapping in the wind. He charged into the enemy ranks with his sword, cut down the rebel leader, Julian Qi, from his horse, and captured Marcus Shen alive, escorting him all the way back to the capital. I thought this young man must be Shan, but logically, he should have captured both Julian Qi and Marcus Shen and brought them back to the capital to await Alexander Shen's judgment. Why would he just kill him like that? I was still waiting for Alexander to come for me and bring me to the palace, so I could ask him about it. That afternoon, however, as Charlotte Lang and I went to our favorite street stall for some chicken wonton soup, we suddenly heard 9 tolls of a funeral bell echoing from the palace. The scalding wonton burned my tongue. I dropped my spoon and shot to my feet in a panic. The funeral bell tolled 9 times, the highest imperial rite. It meant the emperor was dead. I threw down a piece of silver and turned to walk toward the palace, but after just 2 steps, a soft, cool hand gripped mine. It was Charlotte Liang. Don't rush, don't panic yet. Her voice was trembling too, but she was trying her best to comfort me. I don't believe the emperor is gone just like that. He's been planning and scheming for so many years, and now he has you. I shook my head. I'm not panicking. Then I sat back down, picked up a new spoon, and continued eating my wontons. Charlotte sat down across from me, staring at me worriedly. Sophia, are you okay? Are you all right? I'm fine. I was just suddenly thinking about what I had said the day I left the palace. I trusted Alexander. I trusted that he would handle everything, and I trusted that he would come back for me, alive. If he couldn't, that was fine too. I would just go and find him. Whether in heaven or in hell, I had to hear him praise me one more time. My little Sophia is so amazing, and I had to hear him say again, I like you. I finished the wontons, drinking almost all the soup, and even bought 2 sesame peanut flatbreads from the stall next door to take with me. Charlotte was extremely worried, following my every step as if she were afraid I'd do something rash. Night fell and the sky darkened. I was sitting in the courtyard, nibbling on a flatbread, when I suddenly heard a faint vibration from the stone ground. I turned my head and asked Charlotte, Did you hear that? She had just nodded when the courtyard gate was kicked open. The glint of a blade flashed in the bright moonlight, thrusting toward me with incredible speed. Seth. I heard an exceptionally cold and sharp voice, laced with a hint of barely there panic. Then a force from behind yanked me backward, and an even faster sword shot out from the side, piercing through the chest of the person in front of me. The tip of the sword stopped 2 inches from my face, dripping with blood. I looked up at the man before me. He was dressed in dark robes, his long hair tied up high. His eyes were calmer than the moonlight, the fierce killing intent gradually fading away, replaced by a bright smile that melted in the pale light. The body collapsed with a thud. Alexander Shen tossed his sword aside, opened his arms to me, and, against the still roaring sounds of battle outside the gate, smiled so wide his eyes curved. Then he said, My little Sophia, I've come to take you home. I sniffled, ran forward, and crashed into his arms, and Alexander held me tight. He held me for a long time before whispering in my ear, My little Sophia, are you brave enough to try riding a horse? I nodded. Alexander carried me out the gate, helped me onto a tall, magnificent horse with snow-white hooves, and then settled in behind me. Before we left, he turned to look at Charlotte. I know you can ride. Charlotte rolled her eyes. I know. Just take your beloved little Sophia and get out of here. I'll follow on my own. We spurred the horse on, galloping toward the palace. It was only then that I learned Alexander had faked his death to draw out the disloyal officials still hiding in the court. Like Owen's song? Alexander lowered his head and smiled, kissing my cheek. Sophia is so clever. The feeling was so familiar. My fluttering heart instantly settled down. I curled up in his arms, clutching the furry edge of his cloak. Before the palace gates, two armies faced off. Sean, his sword dripping with blood, stood with the innocent face of a young boy, staring blankly at Owen Song. He said, "General Song, you have already lost. Surrender now, and you might spare your own life and the lives of your soldiers." Then his gaze shifted to Alexander and me on the horse. From a distance, he knelt. "I, Shan Shao, greet the Emperor and Consort Sophia." Owen Song's face turned ashen. He turned to look at us, his expression shifting several times before he knelt in bitter defeat. "I, Owen Song, greet the Emperor." That was a sign of surrender. I silently let out a breath of relief for Alexander. Just as I was about to say something, the urgent sound of hooves approached from behind. Charlotte, her skirts flying, rode up and stopped a few steps from Sean, her gaze fixed on him. And Sean, who was usually completely emotionless, was so flustered by her stare that he looked away. A moment later, Charlotte let out a soft laugh and said, word by word, "Shan Xiao, General Xiao, do me a favor and tell me, how did you get that scar on your ear?" So, Sean killed Julian Chi on the spot because Julian had deceived Charlotte? Alexander nodded, picking up a white stone from the jade box and placing it on the chessboard. After the battle at Steep Moon Pass, he returned to the capital with Marcus Shen. The moment he arrived, he knelt before me, confessed to killing Julian Chi, and said he was ready to accept any punishment. 8 years ago, I saved a dying Sean from a pack of wild dogs. He had that scar on his ear back then. I thought a dog had bitten him. I never imagined it was Charlotte's doing. I hesitated for a long time before placing my black stone, then looked up at him. "Why do I get the feeling you're insulting her? Am I?" Alexander nodded nonchalantly, then pointed to the board. "Sophia, you've lost." Actually, when I first returned to the palace, I was angry with Alexander. "You were going to fake your death to set one last trap. Why didn't you tell me?" That night, after we returned to Bellflower Palace, I struggled out of Alexander's arms and glared at him with red eyes. Alexander looked at me helplessly, a clear flicker of pain in his eyes. Then he said softly, "Because I didn't know if I would make it out alive. Sophia, I was playing a dangerous game. Winner takes all. If Owen Song had won, I would be the one in chains right now. If that happened, Seth would have safely escorted you and Charlotte out of the city to live out your days in the prosperous lands of Jiangnan. And you?" He smiled, a gentle, helpless expression on his face. "I would probably have had to go on ahead." That made me even angrier. I resolved to ignore Alexander for at least 3 days and started walking toward the bedchamber on my own. But just as I reached the door, I heard violent coughing from behind me. I whipped around to see Alexander covering his mouth as he coughed, his head turned to the side. The moonlight fell on his face, making it as pale as paper. All my anger and frustration vanished in an instant. I ran over to him, supported him, and gently patted his back. "My little Sophia, you're not angry anymore, are you?" "I'm still angry." I bit my lip and looked up at him. "Alexander, why didn't you tell me? The day you sent me out of the palace, you promised me that if we were to die, we would die together." "Yes, I promised you that." The moonlight fell into Alexander's eyes, melting into a pool of long-suppressed love. It was as quiet and deep as a lake, and I felt myself about to drown in it. "But Sophia, dying is a very painful and cold thing. You're only 14. There are so many things in this world you haven't seen. I couldn't bear it." He spoke so gently. I sniffled, my tears about to fall. Alexander took my hand in his and said in a low voice, "Sophia, don't be angry anymore. I promise you, I will never hide anything from you again. We will live and die together. All right?" I couldn't stay angry any longer. I hugged him back and softly answered, "All right." I had thought about it long ago. If I ever had the chance to see him again, I would do just this. Hold him tight and never let go. Later, Charlotte teased me. "Haven't you read The Art of War? Do you know what a self-injury ploy is?" I shook my head and looked at her with a straight face. "Not at all. This is a private pleasure of the bedchamber. I hope you and Shan Shao get to enjoy it soon, too." At the mention of Shan Xiao, her expression changed instantly. I heard from Lucy that Sean had been going to Everjoy Palace every day to see her, bringing all sorts of snacks, jewelry, and trinkets, but Charlotte wouldn't even open the door for him. From what she'd told me before, and her reaction now, I could piece together the truth. Back then, Sean had saved Charlotte's life, and she had bitten his ear, but for some reason, he never admitted it. Instead, he let Julian Chi take the credit. Sean had been by Alexander's side ever since, so he must have seen Charlotte countless times, yet he never revealed himself to her. So it was perfectly normal for her to be angry now. I took a sip of fruit tea and looked up at her. I heard from Alexander that next month Sean will lead troops to the northern frontier to quell the Qian rebellion. Her movements suddenly froze. For their part in the rebellion, the Prime Minister's estate was confiscated, and Marcus Shen, who had finally come out of hiding, was imprisoned in the imperial dungeon. After voluntarily surrendering his military authority, Owen Som was given a sinecure and remained in the capital. The 100,000-strong West Prefecture army that he had once commanded was handed over to Charlotte's older brother. But Alexander's ambitions didn't stop there. With the internal strife settled, his next move was aimed at the northern frontier. Charlotte's expression shifted. A moment later, she stood up and had her maids see me out. Not 2 days later, when Alexander came to see me, he told me that Charlotte had requested to leave the palace and accompany Sean to the northern frontier. "And you agreed?" He nodded, picking a bright red cherry from the fruit platter and handing it to me. "She's practiced martial arts since she was a child. While she might not be a top-tier fighter, she can protect herself. Besides, swords don't have eyes. Sean will find a way to appease her and keep her off the battlefield." I thought what he said made a lot of sense, so I set my mind at ease and happily finished the entire plate of cherries. I was so full, I couldn't even eat dinner. Still worried about Alexander's health, I later had the imperial physician come to check his pulse. The old, white-bearded doctor told me that although Alexander was born with a weak constitution, he was now eating and taking his medicine regularly. His cheerful mood helped too. As long as he continued to take good care of himself, there would be no major issues. Only then did I finally feel at ease. That afternoon, as I was returning from the imperial garden with a large bouquet of hibiscus flowers, I ran into Seth at the door. He bowed and told me that my brother had been beaten to death because he couldn't pay his gambling debts. Last year, in early spring, my parents had soaked in the cold waters of the city moat for an hour and never came back up. But my brother, perhaps because he had been well-fed and robust since childhood, had actually managed to survive. As I had promised, I had nothing more to do with him, leaving him to fend for himself. However, a gambling addiction, once it takes hold, is not so easily broken. So, I wasn't too surprised that he died because of it. I just glanced guiltily inside the room. As it happened, Alexander was standing at the door, watching me. Light and shadow flickered across his noble, detached face, momentarily hiding the expression in his eyes. "Alexander." I hesitated, not daring to move forward. In the end, it was Alexander who walked over and took my hand. "Come on, let's go inside and eat." During the meal, I kept stealing glances at him. Finally, Alexander put down his chopsticks and looked at me thoughtfully. "Sophia, we're just eating. Why do you keep looking at me?" "After what I did, I was worried you'd be disappointed in me." Alexander picked up a piece of lotus root stuffed with meat and placed it in my bowl, his eyes curving into a smile. "Sophia, seeing you finally get your revenge makes me happy. Why would I be disappointed?" Could that be true? Before we went to sleep, I asked him, "Alexander, you really don't think I'm a bad person?" In the soft candlelight, he opened his eyes and looked at me. "What is a good person? What is a bad person? I once taught you that when someone is unkind to you, you must strike back even harder. If that makes you a bad person, then how many people in this world can truly be called good?" His warm fingers rested on my head, stroking my hair again and again. Then he suddenly laughed. "My little Sophia, let me tell you a secret." I stared at him, stunned. Alexander lowered his head, moving so close that his lips almost brushed my ear. "Charlotte must have told you about the past. So tell me, why would the former emperor suddenly suppress the empress's family when everything was fine?" Marcus Shen was the established crown prince, so why would he suddenly rebel? And that disfigured body they found at the crown prince's mansion. Do you really think I didn't know it wasn't Marcus? His voice was very soft, like a mist blanketing the world, but beneath it, a host of emotions simmered. His warm, soft fingertips gently caressed my face, and then he pulled me into his arms. Sophia, you said that if you had known me on the winter solstice 5 years ago, you would have saved me from the lake. If I had known you back then, I would have taught you sooner the meaning of fighting back. I wanted to say more, but Alexander placed a finger on my lips. He asked me, Sophia, do you remember what you said to me the day you left the palace? I said that you are my only family now. The corners of Alexander's lips curved up slightly, and he placed a kiss on my cheek. It is the same for me. With the last weight of uncertainty lifted from my heart, I slept peacefully in Alexander's arms that night. On my 16th birthday, Alexander made me his empress, and we were married. The night before, Charlotte and Sean came to the palace to see me. Before leaving, she handed me a thick stack of illustrated albums. The scene felt strangely familiar. She winked at me. My little Sophia, you're 16 now, and Alexander is 22. Oh right, this too. She took a small vial from her pouch and placed it in my hand. If you're afraid of the pain, put this in the ceremonial wine and drink it with Alexander. And whatever you do, don't tell him I gave it to you. I studied those albums intently, and before I knew it, dawn was breaking. The coronation ceremony was grand and tedious. I was wrapped in magnificent crimson robes, the hairpins and ornaments on my head weighing me down. I felt lost and overwhelmed, but the moment I saw Alexander, all my fears vanished. By the time the ceremony ended, it was nearly evening. Before Alexander returned, I sprinkled the powder from the vial into the wine cups. Feeling a bit unsure, I decided to taste one myself first. But as an intense heat began to build inside me, I slowly realized what Charlotte had given me. When Alexander pushed the door open, I had already taken off my wedding veil and was leaning over the bed, looking at him with teary eyes and whimpering softly. Alexander's expression changed. He strode to the table, sniffed the remaining wine in the cup, and then gritted out, "Charlotte Liang." Hasty footsteps sounded from the roof, followed by a woman's voice fading into the distance. "Good luck, Alexander. Sean and I are leaving." "Alexander, I'm so hot." A storm seemed to rise in Alexander's usually calm, cool eyes. He walked over and gently untied my robes. His cool, jade-like fingertips landed on my shoulder. His voice was hoarse. "Sophia, are you still hot now?" I clutched his hand and refused to let go. In a haze of passion, I heard Alexander's voice in my ear. "My little Sophia, I prefer honesty. So you must tell me honestly how you feel." I opened my mouth, but for some reason, the words from the albums came to mind. "Husband, I am very happy." Before the words had even left my lips, I heard a muffled grunt from Alexander. Then, a flurry of hot kisses fell upon me. "Good girl, Sophia." Finally, I fell into an exhausted sleep and had a dream. In the dream, my mother didn't sell me to the Prime Minister's estate, and I never met Alexander. Instead, when I turned 16, I was sold as a concubine to a merchant's family. I was killed by the main wife, my body wrapped in a straw mat and tossed into a mass grave. And in my final moments, I faintly heard 9 funeral bells tolling from the palace. I woke with a start, instinctively burrowing into Alexander's arms. His warm palm stroked my cheek. It was slick with a thin layer of sweat, as if he, too, had just woken from a nightmare. I told him about my dream. Alexander's arms around me tightened, and he comforted me in a low voice. "Sophia, don't be afraid. It was only a dream." I nodded, then suddenly looked up and kissed his lips. As Alexander stared at me, stunned, I copied his earlier words and said softly, "Alexander, don't be afraid. It was only a dream." In the dream, Alexander and I were worlds apart, each on our own path to the afterlife. In reality, he was sleeping beside me, his chest warm, his heart still beating. Thankfully, it was only a dream. An extra. Alexander Shen. When I was 5, my mother's body was discovered in the lake on the west side of the Imperial Garden. The fish had eaten her lower legs, leaving only bare, white bone. Until the very end, she was only a low-ranking consort. I knelt outside my father's chambers for 3 days. He finally emerged, his outer robe in disarray, and said flatly, "Issue the decree." Promote Lady Sue to the rank of beauty. Bury her in the imperial mausoleum with the rights of an imperial noble consort. He paused, then looked down at me, his face filled with impatience. Alexander Shen, I have done all I can for you. It was the height of summer. The searing sun beat down on me, leaving a scorching, burning pain. Numbly, I accepted the decree and expressed my thanks. I struck my forehead hard against the stone slabs, mashing blood and dust together, once, twice, 3 times. When I finally looked up, my father was gone. Later, when Marcus Shen rebelled, my father, with a heavy heart, dealt with his beloved legitimate son. With no other choice, he was forced to make me the new emperor. I stood before his sickbed, sword in hand, and asked him softly, "Father, do you have any regrets?" For a moment, a strange light flared in his dull, clouded eyes. He coughed up blood as he asked me, "It was you?" I smiled. Yes. I was the one who had people advise him that the Empress's family had grown too powerful and threatened the throne. I was the one who sent people to incite Marcus Shen to usurp power. And, of course, I was also the one who slowly poisoned his food and drink. My mother was just a humble palace maid who would have been allowed to leave the palace and marry at 20. But you forced yourself on her in a drunken stupor, then stood by and allowed the Empress to torment her to death. I slowly, inch by inch, pushed the tip of my sword into his shoulder. I watched the muscles in his face twitch violently with pain as he roared like a caged beast. "Alexander Shen, I am your father." "Father." I savored the words slowly. After a moment, I gave a light laugh and shook my head. My father died long ago. He drowned in the lake with my mother when I was 5. The man lying here now is my enemy. I've always known I'm not a good person. I acknowledge no father, no sovereign, no heavens, no fate. My hands are stained with blood. I walked over countless corpses to sit on this throne. But I never expected that someone like me would receive a moment of pity from the heavens, which sent Sophia Lin to my side. When she appeared, I had already confirmed that Julian Qi was hiding Marcus Shen in Yu Prefecture. They had one last card to play there. So, Julian Qi's purpose in sending Sophia to the palace was self-evident. She was right. The first time I saw her, I did consider killing her. But when those frightened, helpless fawn-like eyes looked at me, my heart suddenly softened. She was a blank slate. She didn't even understand the line between love and hate. She was mine to teach. I taught her, and in return, I received the most unconditional love in this world. The night I sent Sophia out of the palace, I had a dream. In the dream, the person Julian Qi sent to the palace wasn't Sophia, but the real Victoria Qi. She and Charlotte Liang couldn't get along, and after 2 years of open and veiled strife, Victoria Qi poisoned her. After Charlotte Liang died, Shan rebelled. He defected to Marcus Shen and joined forces with Owen Song to storm the palace, personally plunging his sword into my heart. His eyes were red as he stared at me, his expression blank. "You promised me you would keep her safe for her entire life." In the dream, I frowned, not understanding what had gone wrong. When I opened my eyes, the sky was beginning to brighten. I was in my bed in Bellflower Palace, and Sophia's sweet fragrance still lingered beside me. I suddenly understood. It was because, in my dream, she wasn't there. Before Sophia's 18th birthday, the litter of kittens that Charlotte Liang and Shan were raising finally turned a month old. I chose the prettiest one, which was pure white all over. Charlotte Liang picked it up, looked it over, and thumped her chest confidently. "She's a very cute little female kitten with a wonderful personality," she assured me. "Sophia will definitely love her." So I gave her the cat as a birthday present. As expected, Sophia adored it. She held the cat all day, unable to put it down. The kitten was incredibly clingy in return. It would even jump onto the table during meals to put its bowl right next to hers. And as for sleeping at night, well, that went without saying. For the first time, Sophia suggested that we sleep with separate blankets. I was stunned, unable to believe it. "Why?" She stroked the cat's head and explained in a low voice, "Because Snowball is still little. She's very attached to me, so we have to sleep together." It would be rather undignified to compete with a cat for affection. I stared into the kitten's blue eyes for a moment, then agreed with a smile. "All right." The next day, after the morning court session, I kept Shan behind. I casually discussed some state affairs before changing the subject. "Are the other kittens at your home also this clingy with Charlotte Liang?" To answer your majesty, the clingiest one was the one Charlotte gave to the Empress. I froze for a second, then it dawned on me. I growled through gritted teeth. Char, lot at lying. It's a good thing I sent her out of the palace early. Otherwise, she would have been the death of me. After Sean left, I sat alone in the imperial study for a while. Finally, I decided I couldn't just sit back and accept this. So that evening, before Lucy made the bed, I gave her a special instruction. Leave only one blanket. Take the rest away, along with the cat. When Sophia went to look for the kitten, I wrapped my arm around her waist and pulled her back onto the bed. Before she could speak, I pressed my lips to her ear and whispered, "Sophie, are you really going to banish me to the cold palace?" The cold palace? She opened her eyes wide, looking at me in confusion. Alexander Shen, what are you talking about? I ignored her for the moment, focusing on the task at hand. The soft, water-red dress slipped away, revealing her snowy, jade-like shoulders. My voice was hoarse. Sophie, I want you to dote on me. Sean must have gone back and told Charlotte Lang what happened. A while later, when she came to the palace to visit Sophia, she made a point of coming to laugh at me. Alexander Shen, you're actually competing with a cat for affection. Ha ha ha. What are you going to do when Sophia has a child? I gave a cold laugh. If that little female kitten hadn't been so clingy with Shan Xiao, would you have even thought of giving it to Sophia? Charlotte Lang's expression froze. I knew I'd hit the mark. After she left, I summoned the newly appointed Prime Minister to the Imperial Study to discuss some matters of state. When I returned to Bellflower Palace, I found Sophia sitting at the table, staring dazedly at the hibiscus flowers in the pot. She looked like she had something on her mind. I walked over, sat down beside her, and pulled her into my arms, asking softly what was wrong. Sophia snapped out of her daze and turned to look at me. Alexander Shen. I just summoned the imperial physician to take my pulse. The physician? My heart leaped into my throat and my voice tightened. What's wrong? Are you not feeling well? A little, so I had the physician take a look. She bit her lip, her tone hesitant. Alexander Shen, I think I might be pregnant. Just what I was afraid of. Thinking back to what Charlotte Liang had said not long ago, I felt strongly that she should set up a fortune-telling stand on the street outside the palace. But once I came to my senses, I couldn't help but worry. Sophia wasn't that old. When she first came to the palace, she was so small and thin. It was only after several years of care that she'd finally put on a little weight. I was still worried, so I summoned Dr. Hu again and had him take her pulse once more in front of me. Dr. Hu stroked his beard and told me, "Please rest assured, Your Majesty. The Empress was frail in the past, but her constitution is quite strong now. After being cared for in the palace all these years, as long as she has a peaceful pregnancy, she will certainly be fine." I held Sophia's soft, warm hand and said blandly, "In that case, prescribe the herbs to ensure a safe pregnancy." Wait. Sophia suddenly spoke up, stopping Dr. Hu. "Come here first. Take the Emperor's pulse." Dr. Hu came over to check my pulse. After a moment, he withdrew his hand with some hesitation. Sophia said, "Whatever it is, you can speak freely. The Emperor's underlying illness and the poison in his system were both carried from the womb. Coupled with his past exertion and mental strain, his pulse has always been erratic. Strong at times, weak at others, never stable." He continued slowly. "But when I took his pulse just now, I found it has become much calmer and stronger, almost no different from that of a naturally healthy person. He hasn't been coughing much these days, and his complexion is much better." Sophia said thoughtfully. "Dr. Hu, could it be because I've been making him eat a lot every day and take his medicinal tonics on time?" "That is indeed a possibility." In the end, Dr. Hu wrote a prescription for a pregnancy-stabilizing tonic, and Lucy went with him to fetch the herbs. Sophia looked very happy. "Alexander Shen, did you hear that? He said your body has healed. It means eating properly really works." "Yes." A warmth spread through my heart, melting the last of the ice within me. "Sophie, don't worry. I still have to live to be 100 with you and watch our child grow up. I won't die so easily." To be honest, I'm not particularly fond of children, but because this child was now growing inside Sophia, it held a different meaning for me. What I didn't tell her was that my health had improved, perhaps not because I was eating properly, but because she existed. because afterward I had many more different dreams. In those dreams, I was always alone. Sophia never appeared, and I never again met anyone I loved. I ended up losing both my empire and my life. That night, she was curled up in my arms, half asleep when she suddenly tightened her hold on me. Alexander Shen, meeting you is the luckiest thing that has ever happened in my life. She said it so gently, and with such sincerity. Her voice was like silken threads winding around my heart, weaving into my very flesh and blood until we were bound together, never to be separated. 1,000 emotions surged through me, a magnificent tide. I gently closed my eyes. Sophie, I'm the one who should be thanking you for changing my life.